Alright, it's recording now. Alrighty. So yeah. Hello everyone. My name is Pyro. You may know of me from playing games in the community. I have been playing Carrier a lot, like over the course of PTB, and now like even more since like the PTB went to main branch. I've become something of like a carrier main, I guess. I used to main frontline, and I still do play a lot of frontline, but nowadays I play more carrier than anything. I just like the versatility and the creativity that you can achieve with it. Um, and so that kind of brings us to like our first talking point. Excuse me. Right, so what is a carrier? So starting from like the bare bones, a carrier is a ship that carries smaller ships. In this case, strike craft. A carrier, in the context of Nebulous Fleet Command, is a backline asset. That is to say that it supports the front line and the cap fleet in um, like taking down enemy craft, securing points, holding space, scouting. It's sort of like a catch-all sort of utility archetype, to where it might not have as much out-and-out ordnance as like a cruise missile fleet, but it does have more versatility and reliability. Um, for like craft themselves, craft are the like small ships that are put inside the carrier. Each of those has a specific role and a general archetype. Um, how you build your craft kind of determines what their role is, but as a general rule of thumb, um, okay, you have fighters, which are escorts and also light bombers. Um, your Tanos, your Barracudas, they're mainly for escorting like bombers, escorting like ships, providing point defense in that way. And then they can also be equipped with munitions to hit small ships as well. Um, that's more of like a secondary role. Um, Next, you have bombers, which are, of course, your bread and butter. Like 90% of the time, if you're taking a carrier, you're taking it for the bombing potential. Bombers, drop your conventional missiles, like S2s, torps, bombs, all that fun stuff. And like bombers are kind of like the main point of a carrier in most cases. And beyond that, you have your utility craft, like sundials for ANS, your halberds for OSP, and then OSP also has access to pikes. So for these utility craft, the sundial is essentially a spyglass on a stick. It's got a 10-kilometer range radar that gives like a bad track, but it lets you know that there's like bad guys there. It's expensive, but the situational awareness can be worth it. And it's one of the main things that a carrier can offer is help in the sensor game like that. Next, you have like halberds, which are mainly an OSP tool. They can take stuff like the advanced radar package on OSP, which gives it like a slightly smaller radar than a sundial has, but still long range enough that you can like see enemy ships coming and such. That's 8 kilometers versus 10 kilometers. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, just make sure that you're muted during the tutorial, just to make things easy, and just use voice text chat if you have any questions. Thanks. All right. So yeah. Next is like the pikes, which are scouts in a similar vein to like sundials and halberds, but Pikes are a lot faster and a lot more squishy, and they don't really have a search radar that you can give them, but they do have something called an EO ball, which has a purpose, but generally isn't too great. It's kind of niche, and we'll get into that later. And then, last but not least, back to the topic of halberds. With the new patch, halberds have found some new life on both ANS and OSP as a sort of a defensive line tool to hold space against like enemy bombers and such. They have enough HP and armor that they can tank quite a few S1s, which are the main air-to-air threat these days, while also carrying a significant complement of S1s of their own. So we'll get into that later as well. Let's see. Something that sets carriers apart from, say, like cruise missiles as well is the fact that, like with your bombers and such, your bread and butter, you have access to command. Now with the new patch, giving your craft command channels takes points, but it's still worth it. The ability to just right-click on an enemy ship and shoot missiles at it and have it hit unless they have comms jamming, and most of the time even if they have comms jamming, provided you have the right backup seeker, is a really powerful tool. It gives a level of reliability that like cruise missiles just don't have natively, and it's like one of the main selling points of craft in general is their access to command. All right. So oh, wait, why did my screen go dark? Oh, okay, I'm good. Excuse me. All right, so let's get into like actually like building a carrier fleet. I've prepared like a number of like carriers and like carrier-based fleets to show to you all today. And I'll kind of get into like the general like procedure of like playing a carrier. For those of you that have played campaign, you of course start off with a big carrier, and that can kind of give you some like introductions to craft, but multiplayer is a whole different ballgame. But there are some transferable skills. So speaking of ANS, first I'll show this sort of straightforward levy plus escort fleet that I have. Like specifically in regards to like ANS carriers, you have like less craft overall usually, but you have like more advanced tools like the coil gun and such that you can use. So while OSP kind of has the advantage in like numbers and raw stats, ANS has like some pretty effective tools that they can use, including access to the EO seeker for their missiles. So like the generally speaking, the upsides of the Livy are its ability to launch craft quickly. ANS in general arms their craft very, very quickly. Like every single hull on the faction has a bonus to arming craft. And so it winds up being that the main limiter for launching craft is a flight deck traversal, not like arming time necessarily. Like in a levy, you can put in like 2 deck gear lockers and you're pretty golden on arming time, but you want like 2 to 3 FTDSs in order to like not just have your levy be sitting there with its pads idle while it like recharges the pads and such. As far as like on OSP, you're more limited by arming time as opposed to like pads. Speaking of pads, for a single levy fleet, single levy kind of showcases the special tools that ANS has access to. Like you know, you have your sundial here. There's like some EO torpedoes in the mix here. But to like make up the difference with the pads as well, you usually want like a strike down station or two, and that's something you'll see on ANS, but not really OSP. But that's just kind of like what a levy has going for it. It's like really fast arming time. It has like a good amount of hangar space, but yeah, it can arm craft real quick. So like the next thing is like looking at the missiles themselves, because like what is a carrier if not a platform to launch missiles? This carrier that I have here has about a billion different types of missiles in it, but I swear by the end of this you will all like know everything this does and be comfortable with it. Like it looks like a lot, but it's really not. Like all of these twerps are basically for the same purpose. So like getting into like carrier play, like for starters, you have like your S1s. Like Nebulous Fleet Command is a game where you need to like control space in order to like control points and like win the game. And as far as like craft are concerned, fighters are what's needed to like clear out enemy bombers and prevent them from destroying like your allies. It used to be that the SDM2 was the main tool that you would see on craft for like, you know, air-to-air fights, dogfighting. But since SDM2s got removed, the SDM1 has become sort of the ASF missile of choice. ASF meaning air superiority fighting. Because now lunges can take a regular blast frag warhead, and they are no more expensive than a Balestra, a regular S1. But they have this big boost engine strapped to the back of them, and but as a caveat, they can only be taken on fighters. The reason you want to put lunges onto fighters is because, like, your opening salvo, like getting the alpha strike in, is really, really important. Dogfighting is kind of a game of who kills who first. And so having that range advantage puts you at a really like good spot to be in. So I have like these missile tunings here, and like I'll also be posting all of these fleets like after the tutorial, so like everyone here will have access to all of these missiles, all these craft and carriers, and yeah. But essentially, this tuning I have here with this lunge is specifically designed to make it so that a Barracuda has no hope of running away, period, as long as you fire them with stand-in turned on. Because what stand-in does is it limits the range of your craft's munitions to about 4.5 kilometers. There's some other like math in there, but generally speaking, if you're on stand-in, your craft will launch their missiles about 4 to 4.5 kilometers away from a target, as long as they have the range to do so. For like craft-to-craft fights, you basically just like shave off like 25% of your range, and that's like the range that the missile will want to fire at. If you go on standoff, it takes off that 4-kilometer cap. But stand-in will kind of like maintain engagement range and maintain that sort of like 4-kilometer sort of like missile firing range. So like essentially these have it with like their speed and range, so that by the time that the missile fires, even if the Barracuda or Tanto is like H burning directly away from the missile, a fighter, regardless of faction, can't go fast enough to run away from this. With 5,200 meters of range at 300 ms, the boost range will get it to within seeker range when fired on stand-in, and then when the Seeker takes over, the main stage will take over, and then this engine right here, when it's like, 2 kilometers away from the target after the boost stage has it go in, will catch the fighter 100% of the time. Their only hope is to try and dodge the missile, but since Craft recently got their maneuverability nerfed super hard, it's pretty difficult for them to do that. If they use Chaff, Chaff can sometimes save them, but Craft Chaff generally isn't very good. It only works like maybe a third to half the time, if even. So this is a really good way to get that Alpha Strike potential and ensure that you kill the enemy fighters before they kill you, which is the name of the game. Moving on, I just have this EL frag version of the lunge, which goes on like a more invested Tanto that's in this fleet. I'll get to those in a second. The point of EL frag is that it has a much higher chance of actually doing damage than like regular blast frag does. Like with Craft, missiles that fail their damage roll will do half damage, but EL frag will do its full damage way more often than regular blast frag does. So it's more like slot efficient, if not point efficient. Yeah, so next with the torpedoes here, I'll kind of explain like what the idea here is. With bombers, like they are very expensive by themselves. Like each bomber with like either a missile control computer or a decoy launcher, a blade of foam, whatever, it's about as expensive as like an entire S3H cruise missile. And like since this thing is like as expensive as a size 3 hybrid by itself, like not even counting the torpedoes it's carrying, you really want to both be able to drop your payload on target and get your bomber back. Because, well, if you don't, then you're at a big points disadvantage, at least in comparison to other backline archetypes, like cruise missiles. Yeah, speaking of, with like bombers here, they are, after like the Craft update, they've become a lot more vulnerable to like things that target Craft, like point defense turrets, RPF, bombshell, all that fun stuff. So when Craft initially come out of your carrier, they'll be on direct. If you want them to have any hope of living against like sand shot or grape shot, you will need to throw that on at least a juke, and then preferably on evasive once you get closer. Getting bombers onto target is like the main difficulty with playing a carrier. Like, as reliable as they are much slower than cruise missiles. They're much easier to hit than cruise missiles. So you have to kind of use the fact that you can actively control them to like use cover, take like stealthy paths to your target, and just, overall use the strengths of the Craft to your advantage. Here, to that end, I have like these torpedoes here that I use on like my own levy. These have a really small warhead as far as like torpedoes go, but each one is still doing like 50% more damage than a max size S2, so they still hurt pretty bad, especially against like marauders and stuff, which like will take basically all of these damage rays every time they're hit. So the point of these is to fire at about 4 kilometers and some change, which will allow the bomber to avoid the lion's share of grape shot so long as it's on evade, and can even get it in against like Sarissas on Acellas and such. it's kind of up to you when building your carrier whether you want to build for like safety and like point defense penetration like this, because these also have weave and they go pretty fast at 255 ms, so they can dodge a decent amount of 20 mil. And on top of that, the claymores, some of them anyway, have decoy launchers. I usually launch equal numbers of a command equipped craft and then decoy equipped craft, just so you can kind of get the best of both worlds. Since the levy I have here has like 2 strike down stations, I can prepare 4 claymores at the same time, which lets me launch basically 2 of these and 2 of these for a wing of 4, which is a lot of torps and a lot of decoys. So another thing when trying to get your torps in on bombers, whether it's torps or S2s or anything, you want to have a variety of seeker combos, because soft kill is very, very prevalent these days. And if you're not soft killing, you're probably dying, unless you have like, you know, God's own hard kill setup. But in order to get past soft kill and basically be the one blowing up the ships, you want to basically make it as hard as humanly possible for them to do all of like the Simon Says, you know, Dance Dance Revolution combinations required to like soft kill everything. And so I have like 4 different torpedoes across like my 2 different types of bombers that I launch in like every salvo. Command home on jam is useful to like just float in missiles that have like a warbler or like a interruption jammer. Unless there's like some kind of radar jamming going on, they will just fly straight. And if they have a blanket jammer, like a blanket jammer or a bellbird or a lyrebird going on, these will seek them anyway. However, the home and jam seeker can be defeated, of course, by killjoys, which are newly default in every starter fleet now, as well. OSP likes to put jammers onto like defensive containers, which also have great big warheads in them. That's called a Helljoy, if you're familiar. And those like jammers on missiles will pull off these home on jam seekers after the command has been soft killed by a comms jammer. But to solve that, we have other missile types here. This one is an active radar with command validation torpedo, and it's set to reject. And what that means is that if the radar seeker here is jammed, it will just fly straight, because the command validation basically asks, is this what I was track fired at? If no, don't seek it. And that's because it's set to reject. So all of the phantom signals, all the phantom tracks that the missile is given from radar jamming, the missile ignores all of them because none of them are the command validation target. Now, conversely, if the command validation receiver is jammed, the missile will also fly straight, because since it's set to reject, if it's not receiving a validated track from the validation seeker, it will just fly straight and not seek anything. To answer your question, command cap does come into play on validators. I know there was like a bug with it recently. I'm not sure if that's been fixed, but if not, it should be fixed relatively soon. I wouldn't rely on it. But yeah, it is intended that the command cap on bombers comes into play for validators. So yeah. So the thing is with this missile is that the only way this doesn't fly straight is if it's, you know, either seeking a target, in which case it's liable to hit, or if like both the radar seeker and the command jammer are jammed. If both of them are jammed, then it will wiggle and like go off target. But the reason why this is so powerful is because it takes 2 types of jamming in order to make it do anything but seek the target or fly straight. And if it flies straight, it's usually going to hit the target anyway. Yeah, next for the decoy-equipped claymores, we have these expensive boys right here. These are EO ARAD torpedoes, and it's really expensive, but the fact that we only have a single levy here means we can get away with using tools like this. This is part of the like special invested tools that you can achieve when you go for quantity over quality, when you go for like a single levy plus escorts as opposed to like a double levy fleet. These torps right here, they will seek the target no matter what kind of jamming is going on. They'll ignore chaff. The only thing they fear is a dazzler. And if the enemy ship has a dazzler, then the ARAD seeker will seek their search radar or their pinpoint if they have like a pinpoint or a bullseye going on. However, if they have like killjoys, the missile will try to seek search radars over jamming signals, but it's not always 100%. So the main counter to ARAD seekers is just turning your radar off. But you'd be surprised how many players, especially OSP players, don't hit the MCON button and pay for it. And so that's kind of what this torpedo here achieves. It checks, do you have a dazzler, and did you turn your radar off? And usually the answer to both those questions is usually no for at least one of them. Next and last but not least, we have these ACT EOVAL torps. These are again set to reject, and just like before, if the EO is dazzled, it'll just fly straight. If the active radar seeker is jammed, it'll just fly straight. It has to be both jammed and dazzled for it to wiggle. And that's usually a tall order. So basically with all four of these like seeker combinations together, it requires the OSP player to have a comms jammer going, have a killjoy out, have their radar turned off, have a dazzler going on, and also make sure that the killjoy is an arc long enough to make this one go all wobbly. So the benefit to a seeker not set to reject is basically if you want to like go gambling and you like want to still seek your target even if your validator gets jammed or something. Most often you see like seekers set to accept for like ACT ARAD val because with ACT ARAD val it's usually still a cheapish seeker combination, so you can like spam a lot of those missiles. And so even if they like turn their radar off and they drop a bunch of chaff, hopefully some of them will still go for the ship in question. Whereas if they were set to reject, the missile would just fly straight. And if it's like a cruise missile, like a hybrid, it might not even stage if it doesn't see the target in time. So that's like the sort of benefit of accept, is that it basically turns the missile into a mono seeker missile if your validator gets like jammed or something. It's more, you'll see accept more with like cruise missiles than like torpedo strikes off of bombers. So yeah. The next like two torpedo types I have here for these claymores are these like high yield variants, which have like double the warhead of the other torpedoes. These are a shorter range and they don't have terminal maneuvers, and they're absolutely not getting in on anything that has a significant amount of like 20 mil. But these are designed to punish like say Acellos that only brought Auroras, because these will fire basically right at the edge of Aurora range, and these plus like the decoys means that these are probably going to turn the Acello into slime if it only has Auroras. Like whereas these like don't really confer any special benefit versus like the high yield variant. If anything, these just give more time for Auroras to shoot at them, and while Auroras aren't good against Torps, the longer they have to burn themselves out on said Torps, the more they can pick off. So, like, these are basically for punishing enemy ships that forgot their 20 mil at home. If they don't have a Pavis or Defender, then these show up to their door and, like, firebomb their house, essentially. And then I only have, like, a few of these, because usually there's only, like, a few good targets for these. But whereas these will, like, heavily damage a ship if they connect, these will, like, straight up mission kill a ship if they connect. So that's just sort of the difference there. Last but not least, back to like fighters, I just have these like 1-point SSM-1s. SSM-1s are essentially ballistras that got their seeker cost cut in half and also have a second seeker slot. So they can be used for a variety of fun new combinations that are both economical and effective. Here, this one is not only act, but also wake. The point of like the secondary weak seeker is to basically act as like a big funnel to where if like the act misses its target, then if the since the whoops, I don't want to do that. If the wake, since it has like a 120-degree cone, if that sniffs like a drive trail on like a craft, like a Tanto or a Barracuda or something, it'll turn towards that fighter or bomber or anything, and then give the act seeker a second chance to like find the target. So this basically, since it has like a very, very wide cone, is just to turn the missile towards its target if it misses to give it another chance, essentially. Wake seekers by themselves are incredibly inaccurate and generally not very reliable, and they only work if like they have the rear of whatever they're trying to hit. Also notably, missiles do not leave a wake trail. It's kind of visually misleading in like the game. If you look at a missile, you'll see like a little fire trail behind the missile, but missiles do not have a wake signature. So wake is completely useless as like an AMM or like trying to shoot down missiles of any kind. So yeah, that's basically what these are for. And between the lunge and the SSM-1, it has basically made ballistras obsolete insofar as craft-to-craft engagements are concerned. The only reason you should probably ever put a ballistra on a fighter is if you're doing some sort of like semi-active homing illumination light bombing setup, like Spam 2 if you've ever heard of that. But as far as like dogfighting is concerned, lunges and SSM-1s are better than a ballistra in literally every way. Okay. So that's basically like this sort of levy archetype in a nutshell. You get better craft in lieu of having more craft. You still want to have enough craft to like have enough like game presence and empty out your mag, because an ideal carrier game has you with an empty mag at the end of it, and ideally with all those munitions into enemies. I'll go into like the craft themselves here in a minute and just kind of pick apart the like Tanos and such. But something I want to like talk about really quick is like the Moorline matchup. So like most of the time, like 80% of the time at least, a single levy will lose against a Moorline, unless it has like an escort with it. And the reason that is because like a Moorline can just take a lot more craft than a levy can, and you just get outperformed just by sheer weight of numbers. And while you do have like a better craft with better tools, if they have like a wing of Barracudas that's like twice the size of your wing of Tanos, you're gonna have a rough time unless you also say have a Sursa frig picking off barracudas and sturgeons and whatnot in the area. And then that's what this is for. With like a spyglass and a prowler drive, it's supposed to creep around up in orbit and basically provide like an 8-kilometer radius no-fly zone, to where like any craft that enter it are going to have a difficult time maneuvering without taking damage or getting shot down. So you can kind of use like Sarissa escorts in your Levy fleet as like a force multiplier to help control space, because your Tanos will have a lot easier time killing all of the enemy barracudas if they're also within the protection of, say, this frigate right here. Other archetypes that are popular for escorts with a single levy are like missile dudes that basically use like blast frag hybrids to kill fighters and such. There's also Adash, and Adash is kind of advanced, but I'll talk about it really quick. I don't have like a setup for Adash to showcase at the moment, but this wouldn't be a very good carrier tutorial if I didn't at least talk about Adash a little bit. So essentially, insofar as like escorts are concerned and just like shooting down enemy craft in general, Adash is essentially anti-craft, anti-ship hybrid missiles that can both blow up like your tugboats, your shuttles, and then also hit like bombers and such. In my like missile library here, I have an Adash somewhere around here. It's like the one thing I should have set up in advance. Let's see here. It's an ACM. It's also blast frag. I know it's around here somewhere. Give me 1 second. Aha! Found it. Adash. Okay, so essentially, this is what an Adash looks like. It looks frighteningly similar to like your standard sort of like command guided S2H for, you know, blowing up shells and tugs, because that's basically what it is. The only thing it doesn't have is terminal maneuvers, because it would miss like sturgeons and barracudas otherwise. But the way you use this is by setting your PDMSL to manual, or just turning off your doctrine so that it doesn't shoot automatically at all. And then you use like a bullseye to get a lock, and then you use the Z key, or whatever your point defense priority key is, to fire these manually at craft. As long as you have a sturgeon or a barracuda bullseye locked, and you fire one of these Adash at it, most of the time it will blow up that bomber or like fighter in one shot. Because like a barracuda has like 60 HP, a sturgeon has like 135 HP. Yeah, this was like 900 damage, so yeah. Like Adash is a popular tool these days for achieving your superiority. Even if you're not a carrier fleet, you can still like absolutely make use of Adash, as long as you can get a target lock on enemy craft and you don't mind like the additional micro of like I use X on my keyboard. It's X to like lock a target. X, click to lock, hit Z to shoot like hybrid at it. You just got to keep locking and shooting, lock, shoot, lock, shoot, lock, shoot. It's kind of intensive, but it works. If you don't want that level of micro, you can also use just blast frag hybrids, which won't one-shot a bomber, but will absolutely one-shot a fighter. And you can use those to achieve air superiority with your own fighters, because if you have fighters and your enemy doesn't have fighters, but they have bombers, you can just kill their bombers with your fighters, as you might imagine. So yeah, it comes out to about the same price, so it's just kind of like how much micro do you want to deal with. Like this one is like a blast frag S2H, same price as the A-dash. It will blow up a Kuda 100% of the time, unless it has blade of foam, in which case if it rolls badly, the Kuda will barely survive. But yeah, you can see why A-dash is popular because of its ability to like one-shot literally every craft ever, as long as you have a lock. So yeah, that's basically A-dash in a nutshell. But I don't have a fleet to showcase A-dash today, but absolutely keep that in mind and make use of it. Right. So before I move on to a different fleet, I'll take a look at the Tanos here for everyone. Here I have like these mainline Tanos, which have the S1 bay. When you're doing ASF, after the update, more missile is more better because there are 1-point SSM1s everywhere. And so it's really, really cheap and easy to just fill up with ACMs and just fire them en masse at enemy wings. And that's kind of like the intention of how like dogfighting is supposed to work. It's supposed to be like a missile fight more than it is a gunfight. The point of the nose guns is just to like clean up after all the missiles have been expended. But to get to that point, it generally helps to have more munitions than your enemy wing of craft you're trying to kill. So that's the point of the S1 bay here. There's also an argument for going with fuel tanks, but the main point of fuel tanks is to H-burn all over the place, which doesn't actually help in combat, it just helps you get there. So usually I use fuel tanks more for like escorting my ships when I have like hangar backpacks, which we'll talk about later. But for the purposes of like ASF off a carrier, I find the S1 bay to be like the standard for Tantos. Since we have like our single levy and we can afford to invest a bit more, these Tanos have a blade of foam, and the benefit of a blade of foam is that it makes it so that an S1, regardless of type and regardless of whether it's the frag or not, will not one-shot the fighter in question. It will take 2 S1s, be they SSM1s, lunges, or what have you, to take down the Tano here. And that will let you survive the dogfight and win it if like the enemy Barracudas don't also have a blade of foam, which if they're off a Moor line, they probably don't have a blade of foam. Journeyman can afford to have more invested OSP craft, but we'll get there later. Yeah, essentially these also have high coherence. High coherence got a nerf in the update to where it only triggers blast frag fuses like a third of the time, so it's not really reliable for that. But what it does do is turn that craft chaff sort of percentage from like working less than half the time to working like most of the time, as so long as like the enemy isn't using like command SSM1s or what have you. Like you know, 3/5 of the time, 3/4 of the time, being able to chaff the missiles and make your opponent waste munitions means your craft get to live longer, which also has synergy with the ablative foam here. And that's sort of why this has Heiko. I wouldn't recommend Heiko for like every craft, not after the update anyway. But in this context, it's useful. Besides the ASF loadout with like the lunges and the SSM1s, the Tano here also has frag bombs. And frag bombs are what I like to call a cope munition, because it's what you put on your plane when you don't have anything else to do with it. Stealth. Yeah, so just to talk about stealth really quick, stealth coding is useful sometimes, to answer your question. The main thing that stealth is good for is either for escorting capital ships under cover of jamming, like a blanket or a bellbird, or, well, I guess for stealth coating it'd be just a blanket because OSP doesn't get it. So yeah, just a blanket. But anyways, stealth coating can also be useful for like ambushing enemy wings of craft. But generally, you have to know like where they're coming from to set up your stealth Tanos in advance, and that's kind of like abstract and esoteric. I mainly see stealth Tanos used on like the backpack of like Axfords or Solomons. As well, stealth coating also messes with how blast frag warheads interact with them. Essentially, um, if normally when a blast frag warhead hits a craft, it will do half damage on a bad roll and full damage on a good roll, because blast frag warheads have basically that chance of getting a good damage roll or a bad damage roll. But for craft, it's either full damage or half damage. But with stealth coating, it makes the Tanos behave like missiles, insofar as like blast frag warheads doing no damage on a miss, or if they like roll bad, essentially. So like, whereas half the time the blast frag warhead will do half damage, with stealth coating it does no damage half the time. So it kind of has like a similar sort of effect to ablative foam, in that it like lets you survive about twice as many missiles as you would without it. But it's also twice the price of ablative foam, so you really want to get use out of like the lower radar signature in order to get a benefit from stealth coating. And we'll talk more about that later when we talk about like backpack craft. So yeah. I also have these Tanos here, just for these in this levy. These are specialist Tanos of fuel tanks. These are meant to go screen like your front line. You basically send them like sort of near the front line, and then if enemy bombers show up, you have them come out and like defend against said bombers. They're with coil guns. They're also useful for shooting down missiles. 20 mil and 35 mil really doesn't do anything to incoming missiles unless they're containers, and even then it's not great. But coil gun, on the other hand, will shred missiles for about 6 shots worth, because that's all it has until it runs out. But 6 bullets is like 6 dead S2s. It's like 2 dead containers, 2 dead torpedoes, basically that sort of thing. So for point defense, coil gun is really, really good. And so far as dogfighting is concerned, you don't want to go too hard on the coil gun usually, because if the Tanto dies before it can get within coil gun range, it's wasted. And since missiles are so prevalent now in like dogfighting, the coil gun isn't as popular as it was before. But it still has use, of course. Like a few coil Tanos here and there can and will shred barracudas if they get within gun range. Yeah. Alright. So you might notice with these, I also have ceramic tiling. And something I want to talk about is like what this is good for. And the answer is honestly not much. Like most of the time, ablative foam is like the go-to survivability option for craft in general. But ceramic tiling, it does have like one niche on fighters and like a lesser of a single niche on bombers. But the main thing that ceramic tiling does is it makes it so the armor of the Tanto is greater than the armor penetration of blast frag missiles, as far as S1s are concerned. Blast frag S2 or SDM2 or whatever will still just annihilate the Tano. But if it's just like S1s, like lunges or SSM1s, ceramic tiling, again, makes it so that the missile does no damage on a miss, but more importantly, does half damage on a success. So When you're dogfighting and the S1s are flying everywhere, ceramic tiling fighters have like a half chance on being hit of taking no damage and a half chance of taking half damage. And what that comes out to with like the 50 HP that a Tano has is that it'll still take 2 successes to kill a Tano, just like how with it takes like 2 S1s to kill an Blade of Foam Tano. But the difference is that half the time the S1s are doing no damage. So whereas with the Blade of Foam, 2 S1s will kill you 100% of the time, because with like a max size warhead, an S1 is doing like 60 damage on a success and 30 damage on a miss. And so 1 success and 1 fail will kill your Blade of Foam Tano. Whereas with ceramic tiling, 1 fail and 1 success will only put your Tano to about half health. So it kind of like cheats the bell curve a bit and makes it so that your fighters are slightly better at S1 dogfighting, which is important now. But that's literally its only use. It makes the Tano have a hard time turning, which basically makes it useless as far as like point defense is concerned, because missiles go really fast, and if you can't get your nose gun on target, well, you can't shoot down the missile. As well, Sursa doesn't care at all about ceramic tiling and fighters. Aurora doesn't care. S2s, SDM2s, none of that cares. The only thing that ceramic tiling does for a Tano is make it tank S1s better, essentially. So that's like the niche for it there. Yeah, it is a bit more expensive than a Blade of Foam, so I would only recommend it on like your dedicated dogfighting escorts for like going with your bombers to make sure they get on target. Or in this case, this is for holding the line against like enemy bombers, which will usually have an enemy fighter escort of their own. With just a wing of 4 of these can punch up into larger wings of Barracudas and hopefully make it so that the bombers can't just get in for free and your front line stays alive. For escorting the bombers, I just have these like S1 Beta Blade of Foam Goobers. So yeah, that's sort of like the dichotomy there. Alright, so that's about all there is to talk about with this levy fleet here. The other fleets will get through a lot faster now that I've explained sort of like the basics of carrier and whatnot. We'll look at an OSP carrier next. A Moorline. So the thing that you'll immediately notice upon like generating a Moorline hull is that it is absolutely enormous. Like this thing, when you put the container bank hangers on, can carry an absurd amount of craft, and that's basically what it's good for. Whereas like a single levy and escort fleet has like a high investment specialist craft with specialist tools. The Moorline is like the poster child of quantity over quality. This thing will just win the air superiority fight through sheer numbers, so long as it doesn't like, you know, sell a bunch of its craft to like Sursa Frig or something for free. This thing carries like 40 fighters, 20 bombers. It even has like these little pike goobers, which I'll talk about later, as well as these halberds, which have wake sensors on them, which I'll also talk about here in a bit. Essentially, when you have a Moorline in your OSP, you want to use that weight of numbers to your advantage. You have like 4 pads, which can all fire bombers, or launch bombers rather, along with like 8 small pads for launching Barracudas, plus like the 2 extra pads you can duct tape on. And so you have a total of like 4 large pads and 10 small pads. Excuse me. So that just lets you churn out craft really fast so long as you have the arming time for it. Because like I mentioned earlier, OSP is mainly gated by their arming time. So I usually put 3 or 4 deck gear lockers into a moorline because unlike ANS, they don't have the arming speed bonus that the Levy has. So you need to make up the difference with additional deck gear lockers. Otherwise, despite having a bunch of pads, your craft will be arming in said pads for like ever, and you won't be able to get your strikes out fast enough. So like I said, ANS is mostly gated by deck traversal time. OSP is mostly gated by arming time. That's why this moorline only has 2 FTDS in it. So yeah. Talking about the craft in particular and like the munitions, the Kudas here, your fighters, these don't even have a blade of foam. This is just sheer weight of mass. These are like basically bog standard Barracuda frames. However, with their loadout, they have basically all the fixings. They got fuel tanks, so they can H-burn all over the place and like intercept enemy craft on like the Barracuda's own terms. It has jam pods to like soft kill enemy missiles and hopefully survive a bit longer against like the enemy craft that it's dogfighting with. And on top of that, it has like 4 of these SSM-1s, and these are different than the other SSM-1s on the Levy fleet because these only have a size 3 warhead. And the reason for that is that Tanos only have 50 HP as opposed to the 60 HP that a Barracuda has. So you only need a size 3 blast frag warhead to kill a Tano. And what that lets you get away with is instead of having a Wake backup seeker, lets you have a home on jam primary seeker. So if the Tanos have jam pods, which they usually do, and the Tanos in the Levy fleet I just showed you do have jam pods, the home on jam seeker here will home right in, not even care about the jamming, not even care about chaff, and hit the enemy Tano and blow it up. Failing that, it has a act seeker as a backup to home in on craft anyway. So this has a more reliable seeker combo, and more importantly is longer range than the other SSM-1s. While not as long range as a lunge, the extra tick of fuel here lets you outrange like ANS SSM-1s while still also like one-shotting Tanos that like don't have a blade of foam. And if they do have a blade of foam, well, you know, you're still two-shotting them anyway, regardless of whether you have a size 3 or a size 4 warhead. So this is just better in every way for fighting Tanos. And yeah. And even against ceramic tiling Tanos, cut in half, this will still like kill said Tano on 2 successes, so don't worry about that. Yeah. So that's sort of the like secret sauce of OSP dogfighting, is that you have a natural range advantage. And once we get to like the double J-Man fleet that I have, you'll see that it also extends to lunges. And a lunge with a size 3 warhead has so much range that you can honestly just use standoff and fire them from the next zip code over, as long as you have like a track on the enemy Tanos you want to shoot at. Right, so moving back to like the craft in question, the bombers here also don't have a blade of foam. They just have missile control computers, but you have like 20 of them. So even if you get shot down to like Sarissa or PF, you have a lot of redundancy here, and you have enough munitions to where like losing a strike isn't the end of the world. But even still, I do want to talk about like Sarissa and RPF and all that as well, especially in regards to OSP, because ANS can put a Sarissa on any hull they want. Tours OSP, Sursa is limited to the Ocello. So you're much more likely to be faced with Sandshot on OSP side. And like, because craft got their maneuverability nerfed, if you have your craft on direct, like they automatically are when they come out of the hangar, they will just eat Sandshot for free and die in record time. You want to throw your bombers on juke, or better yet, evasive, and use that to dodge Sarissa while H-burning. But you might be surprised to know that H-burn evade isn't 100% against Sarissa anymore. Even at like the further reaches of Sarissa range, Sarissa will still hit you if you don't manually path a sort of like zigzag path to get through Sarissa range. Now, being on evade, and especially being on H-burn, does dip into your fuel very, very quickly, so it nerfs your range greatly. So you kind of have to like use your best judgment to know when to start H-burn evading and like manually pathing a zigzag, and so that you can get past like Sarissa nets in time to drop your torpedoes. It's also useful for getting your sturgeons back. RPF, on the other hand, basically puts your craft on a timer, because even if you're H-burn evading, even if you're like pathing zigzags, you're still going to get hit by RPF here and there. So regardless of what you do, craft can't exist in like an RPF bubble for very long, especially if there's a lot of RPF. So like for OSP, voxels are usually your least ideal target, because like 2 or 3 voxels all firing 250 RPF together will rip your bombers a new one, like really, really quickly. Oh, excuse me. So essentially, it takes a lot more micromanagement to get past guns in with craft these days. You just gotta be on the lookout for like, the common counters, RPF and Sarissa, and then just use a combination of hard burning with like the evasive setting and also manual plotting to get in and do your thing without losing all your craft. Okay, so let's look at the torpedoes themselves. For these sturgeons, I just have like your standard command home on jam, act command while set to reject that the levy fleet had. Now, when you're going for quantity over quality like this, you can't really afford like super expensive torpedoes. So something like that EO ARAD torp on that levy fleet is like right out for this. Not unless you want to like make major sacrifices with like your fighter ability and your ability to win the air war. But OSP doesn't even have access to EO. But what you do have is like the thermal seeker here, and Act Thermval is also a really good combination. It's just very, very expensive. Things like Corkscrew, you're really like priced out of when you have a Moorline. Usually, super big warheads are also hard to pay for. So like you can afford things in a Moorline, you just have to be prepared to make sacrifices. But if you want a generalist Moorline like what I have here, you gotta kind of pick and choose and like have like basically as generalist munitions as you can get your hands on. But once you do that, this Moorline here has 30 of each kind of torp, so that's 60 torpedoes total for like basically 1.5 loadouts for every surgeon. So every surgeon can leave with like a full thing of torps. Half of them can come back and grab the other half of the torp loadout, and then by that point, hopefully, all of the enemy front line is dead or dying, and you can switch to like using your cluster bombs or start picking off small ships with 100 mil gun pods. All right, and then again, if anyone has any questions, just ask in a voice text chat. Yeah. Alright, so, speaking of cluster bombs, bombs used to be something that you could kind of abuse with, like, either decoys or just having a ton of them, but that's not the case anymore. Especially cluster bombs have, like, fratricide of the bomblets. Multi-role Moorline, not today, because this is like mainly the carrier tutorial. Like if you want to put like container banks onto your Moorline and also like carrier hanger banks, you can, and that's like a valid build. But like container play is best left to someone who's not me, because like container liner is like the thing I have like the second least experience with. It's just not my cup of tea. But anywho, yeah. We also have these pikes here, and I want to like talk about pikes really quick. Yep, talking about them right now. So basically, pikes are basically tiny fighters that are cheap and fast and made of paper mache because they have only 40 HP. And they have like no armor. They have like even less armor than a fighter. Like if you like, where's the fuselage? Yeah, like you can only put a blade of foam on a pike anyway, because ceramic tiling does absolutely zero zilch nada nothing for a pike, even if it could equip it. But basically, pikes are very, very fast. And what I like to use them for in a Moorline like this is chasing down enemy sundials. Because they're so fast and you can strap fuel tanks to them, you can basically send them on kamikaze runs to go like hunt down enemy sundials. And they're less investment than even these like cheap barracudas are, because they don't carry like these munitions on them. They just have fuel tanks. So basically they come out in like 15 seconds, and you can just send them to go chase down enemy sundials that are just sitting out in open space, acting like they can't be shot down. So yeah, that's what I like to use these for in a Moorline. And to put a number to how fast they go, they H burn at like 120 ms, so they get about 15 ms on a fighter. So yeah, they're about like 10% faster than a fighter, 10 to 15% faster than a fighter. Yeah. Then there's these skiffs. OSP makes use of halberds as sensor assets, and they do that through either the wake sensor or the internal radar. This Moorline has the wake sensor because it is significantly cheaper than the advanced radar package. What this wake sensor does is it checks for drive signatures that are like facing it or like are perpendicular to it within like 15 kilometers. So you'll get like basically what's known as a wakelent track, a wakelent LOB, which is like a little purple circle with a purple dotted line pointing towards the direction. So it can kind of act as like an early warning to let you know where either craft or ships are coming from. It won't give you a track unless you have like a crossfix, but it will show you the direction that enemies are coming from. Excuse me. Let's see here. Yeah. For pikes, you can also throw on the EO ball if you want to turn them into sensor assets. Like, the thing about EO pikes is that they used to be incredible because they not only provided a perfect track, but they also gave you, like, a visual and thus complete intel on the target, like, the moment they, like, started looking at a target. But now, the track they give is kind of crappy, and it takes a while for them to, like, give you a visual on the target. And usually they don't live that long. Um, yeah, halberds do have offensive potential in the air fight. I'll swing back to halberds in just a second. Um, but to like round out what I was saying about the EO ball, generally speaking, I find that it's not very worth it these days. Um, like not only is the track not very good, but by the time you get useful intel from the target, or like before you get useful intel from the target, the EO pike has usually been shot down. Especially after the patch with like the craft maneuverability nerf, like this thing will get within Sursa range and like bite it immediately, unless you're like constantly microing it. And if you're microing it, it can't really sit there and look at a target. Um, yeah. Also, like even if you like set it to like look at a target, it'll tend to like slowly get closer to that target, and it's just usually a matter of time before either Sarissa or PF or something kills it. Usually very quickly. Um, so yeah, I wouldn't really recommend an EO ball in those situations. It can be useful as like a niche intel asset that's like cheaper than an advanced radar skiff, but that's about it. So back to halberds. I want to show you something that I don't have in any of the fleets that I have to show today, but is a valid use for a halberd. Halberds can be used to hold the line with ASF and basically take down enemy fighters and bombers. If you like give them a bunch of like ACMs and you give them like a blade of foam and you give them like the 35 mil gun and like also the other 35 mil gun, it turns into like a gunship sort of air superiority platform that is very slow and can't chase anything down, but it's kind of like a brick wall, so to speak. It's good for holding space and basically like holding firing lanes against like bombers and such. To answer your question, craft ACMs do not need to be set to defensive. Craft AI will overwrite the offensive setting and make them defensive. I'm not sure if there's any nuance there, but generally speaking, it doesn't matter if they're set to offensive or defensive. Yeah. So yeah, basically with like your gunship halberd here, the 35 mil turret was not hit with the same nerf that craft guns were hit with. So while your Barracudas, your Tanos, their nose guns have a lot less ammo and fire in bursts now, the Halberd still fires a continuous stream of slugs and has like 1,000 rounds in its magazine for like each one. So these things can shred enemy fighters and bombers. They just have to get within range, and usually they don't get within range unless the enemy craft get within range themselves. But they are so tanky with their like bomber tier armor and a blade of foam that they can tank a very high amount of S1s, especially like regular blast frag ones. So they can just sit there and tank ACMs, and then if like the enemy fighters are out of ACMs and they have to close to gun range, these things will mulch them with their turrets. The thing is they can also take ACMs of their own, so while they're tanking enemy S1s, they're also firing their own S1s. And you can put lunges on these too, so this thing can take like 4 lunges. Yeah, because it's so slow, it's mainly used to just sit out in open space. Yeah, Mink makes a good point in the general voice text chat here. If you set their evasive maneuvers to manual, they will just simply tank the S1s and not even try to evade. And because they're so slow and large, they can't really evade anyway. So it's generally a good idea to just set their evasive maneuvers to manual anyway. Yeah. And they also get one free command channel, so you can put command lunges on them, which is very, very good. Or command SSM1s, up to you. So yeah, these things are basically like air superiority, like defensive platforms. They have a lot of fuel for loitering, but they will burn through their fuel extremely quickly if you like H-burn with them and such. Halberds have like a much higher multiplier to fuel usage when H-burning than like fighters do. So while they can loiter for longer than a fighter, they will burn out their fuel in record time if you like herd burn with them. So that's why they gotta kind of just loiter and hold the line if you do choose to use them in that way. Yeah. Okay, so that's basically the roles of pikes and halberds in a nutshell. Back to the Moorline. Like basically gone over everything for this as far as munitions are concerned. For carrier play in general, I also want to talk about like just how to behave in a carrier in general. A lot of people think that if you hide behind a rock, you're safe. But the thing is that like a big rock is not only cover for you, it's cover for like enemies, such as like enemy rocket shuttles, torp sprinters, bombers, all that fun stuff. When I play a carrier, I basically never hide behind a rock. I pretty much always start my carrier in like a random position at like the back line, at like the withdrawal line, and I'll basically turn on flight quarters, and I will move in a very long line with like multiple waypoints like across the withdrawal line. And so basically my position is constantly changing, and I'm staying like right at the withdrawal line, and I can see enemies coming with like, usually I'll have like a more contrast on my Moorline, or if on a levy, I'll put a spyglass, and that usually lets me see threats hunting my carrier down, coming before they see me. And so then I can send like bombers to react to that threat, or fighters or whatever. So you can either you can use cover for your carrier if you want to deploy a bit closer and have your craft closer to the front line when they launch, but it is more risky than just like hugging the withdrawal line and constantly moving on flight quarters. Yeah, so that's the sort of like the doctrine that I would recommend for carriers, is like, you know, withdrawal line with the long range radar if you want to be safe. Use rocks for cover if you want to be a bit more aggressive. Yeah. Okay. So, also, I highly recommend like not skimping on PD on your carrier. Even just like some 20 mil turrets will go a long way towards like keeping you alive. It's more important on a levy than on a Moorline, because a levy has like rocket shuttles and whatnot to contend with, and like containers. But even on like a Moorline, Pivises can stop like torpedoes that don't have like enough cork or whatever. Like if from like a torp sprinter, they can even catch the odd hybrid if the hybrids don't have like terminal maneuvers, or they just get a really good angle. And also like bombs, like if like enemy craft like try to ambush you with like, you know, KBUs or CBUs or whatever, the 20 mil will protect you from that. It also stops enemy fighters from camping your carrier, because I've had it and also done it before, to where I've basically put fighters to loiter like right on top of an enemy carrier, and the enemy carrier didn't have any point defense, so my fighters would just kill craft as they tried to launch from the launch pads. And if you're getting camped like that and you don't have any point defense turrets, you're basically like out of luck. So yeah, that's why I recommend having at least a little bit of PD as a trait on your carrier. Yeah. Also, damage control. Generally speaking, if your carrier is hit, it's game over. But having a little bit of damage control, like having this damage control complex here, or the large DC locker that I had on the other levy, that can make it so that if you do take like a single missile hit or something, you can restore like a hanger bank from that, or restore like a pad on like a levy. It lets you like recover from like taking like the odd missile hit or what have you. Yeah. So a little bit of point defense and a little bit of damage control go a long way. Yeah. It's basically some things to look out for when playing a carrier. Next. Yeah, I have the other variant fleets I wanted to show you. So to show you all what sort of the opposite doctrine looks like for each faction, so far I've shown like the single levy plus escort fleet, which is quality over quantity, the Moorline fleet, which is quantity over quality, but you can also achieve like similar sorts of like opposite faction doctrines with certain fleets. And for instance, if you have like a double levy fleet, which is pretty popular, you can match the amount of craft that come out of a Moorline and basically dogfight with a Moorline at parity without needing an escort. This is sort of like the ANS Moorline, so to speak. So like essentially with this setup I have here, there's a lot of different ways to do a double levy fleet, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that will do it a different way and like have like a different sort of doctrine that they go with. But the point of this fleet that I made here is to show like a double levy fleet that is like at parity with a Moorline. This has like 40 fighters in it and 20 bombers across like the two levies, so your craft count is basically similar. There's a little bit less investment into ASF with this double levy fleet. You don't have as many like ACMs to throw around, although you do have these like 2-point lunges, which the Moorline did not feature lunges. So yeah, there's also like 32 of each type of torpedo in the fleet, as opposed to 30 of each type of torpedo. So there's a bit more torpedo, a bit more like, you know, lunge action going on. But of course, these don't have like sundials, they don't have like radar skiffs, they don't have like, you know, pikes or whatever for like chasing down enemy sensor assets. This is literally just to have the same amount of dogfighting and bombing capability as a Moorline fleet, in the form of like 2 ships with like a little bit of extra munitions on top. So yeah, you can sort of achieve the same sort of quantity on ANS if you do it this way. And this one has 2 deck gear lockers, because that's all you really need on a levy. And they each have 2 FTDS. Not 3 like the single levy had, but 2 FTDS with 2 levies is still enough to like get a significant amount of craft out in a decent amount of time. On this levy, you might notice that I have a FTDS in this big slot. That doesn't have any benefit. I just did that to be funny. But yeah. As you can see, like these Tanos are just bog standard Tanos, kind of like the Barracudas from the Moorline fleet. The bombers don't have a blade of foam either, they just have missile control computers. It's basically just to dump torpedoes on target, and has the same sort of doctrine as the Moorline. On ANS, whereas on OSP you want to avoid voxels like the plague usually, unless you get like a good ambush on them around a rock. On ANS you want to avoid Acellos usually. Solos are the only carrier of Sursa on OSP, and as such, they are a very tough nut to crack with your craft. And on top of that, SLOs usually have like soft kill. They can have like ACMs. Um, a lot of them will also have like auroras and such to like basically delete all of your decoys if you have like decoy launchers on your claymores. SLOs are essentially the hardest target that you can go after on ENS. Generally, the things you want to bomb are like marauders, flatheads, tugboats, the enemy moorline. But you can go after SLOs if you, again, H-burn, evade, and zigzag your way through the sources. OSP also has access to Grape Shot. Grape Shot is like Diet Surisa in that like it's not as strong as Surisa, but it's a sort of similar thing to where you want to like hard burn, juke, evade, zigzag your way up to like the target if they have like a lot of Grape Shot. Like a Grape Shot does a lot of damage per hit, but it's like not as accurate as Surisa. So as long as you don't get too close, you can generally escape Grape Shot after dumping your torpedoes and get your bombers back. And that's again why these torpedoes that the bombers have are longer range, so that you can shoot your torpedoes and like not get exploded by Grape Shot before you can even like shoot your torpedoes. So yeah, that's basically the sort of opposite doctrine ANS fleet that you can do for carriers. For OSP, you can do something similar to a single levy in the form of double J-Man. Double Journeyman, it gets you a pair of launch platforms that don't have nearly as much craft capacity as a single Moorline does or a double levy. But what it does do for you is it basically buys you 2 large pads for like almost half the price of a little over half the price of a Moorline. So that you can like launch bombers. You can get the extra pads so you can still launch a bunch of Barracudas. You don't really need the strike down stations that like the levy needs, because you can basically launch all the craft you need from each J-Man just from like the pads that it has plus the extra pad you can put onto it. And because you have 2 J-Man, and you have like that sort of efficient double large platform launch platform, you can afford to have like more invested sturgeons and barracudas, because you also like don't have as much craft capacity to worry about, so the craft you do have can be more invested. So these barracudas have a blade of foam, and for ASF they have lunges. The lunges I have here also have the size 3 warhead that will still kill Tanos, because Tanos have less HP than a Barracuda does. And their additional fuel means they can go a lot faster and basically intercept the target first before like the enemy lunges intercept your Barracudas. These Kudas have quite the capacity for ACMs, similar to the S1 Bay Tanos that the single levy fleet I showcased have. They still have jam pods to try and soft kill enemy ACMs that come from. These don't have Hyco, just because Barracudas have a larger radar signature than Tanos do, and so like chaff is even less useful for Barracudas than it is for Tanos. So yeah. Also, like not going with Heiko lets you invest a bit more into other areas. And this just kind of shows that, like, you can have, say, an entire MMT with your double J-Man fleet. But with the bombers, the bombers have like a blade of foam. The torps that they have are still just the like command backup, act command ones. OSP doesn't really have EO, but if I had more time, I could have made like some different torpedo loadouts that are like act thermval, which is good. Like act thermval can get you in on anything that has its drives burning because it won't care about chaff or active decoys or comms jamming at that point. But yeah, there's different seeker combinations you have access to if you're willing to pay for them, and you're able to like invest a bit more with like this sort of quality doctrine over the quantity doctrine. So yeah, this is the opposite doctrine OSP version of things. And even the skiff in question here has the internal radar, which you can afford here, and much more easily than you can on a warline. This provides that 8-kilometer search radar to find where the enemy is and give you sort of an early warning for them. Yeah. So that's that for these. Oh, also, Flechette. So at this point, I should probably talk about Flechette. Flechette is the OSP unique fighter munition, whereas coil gun is the unique munition for ANS. Like coil gun, Flechette is mainly useful for point defense against missiles, but unlike coil gun, the 35mm Flechette doesn't have an incredibly fast muzzle velocity, and also since hybrids are in play, Flechette doesn't really do anything to hybrids that have staged. It's only useful for shooting down hybrids that haven't staged yet. And when you have like a carrier fleet here, it's hard to have the micro and the actions per minute available to like chase down hybrids in their crew stage and like guard against them for your front line. That sort of thing is better left to like your front line themselves. That like a marauder can take a craft on like small hangars that they can put on their C4 mounts. So if you have like a marauder, which I'll showcase here shortly, that has like 450s on one side and hangars on the other, the marauder can kind of use that Flechette for point defense on its own terms, and use their own sort of micromanagement to defend their own front line. Yeah. So let's take a look at that. Actually, it's kind of everything there is to talk about Double J-Man here. It's kind of interesting once you look at it on broad scope. Whereas like the single Moorline is equivalent to the double levy, and the single levy is equivalent to the double J-Man. It's kind of funny how things work out like that. Oh, and also the MMT that's in this fleet is basically just your standard sort of like Bellbird, pinpoint, nose gun, and then this has a TALS because it also has some SDM2s in it to help win the like air war against an enemy levy or what have you. And then it also has these S2s, which are fairly highly invested because you only get a salvo size of 2 off of TALS. So these have like corkscrew and they go pretty fast. And you lock them with a pinpoint and then you fire a pair of these and they'll probably get past a defender and hit a sprinter. So yeah. Next, to sort of round out the carrier tutorial tonight, I have a pair of sort of battle carrier-esque fleets to talk about that use fighters as point defense tools. For instance, these marauders here, like I was saying, the front line has the power to take craft to defend themselves if they so wish. And when you do have backpack craft on like capital ships, you can afford a significant amount of investment on them because you're only going to have like a small handful of craft. So if you spend a lot of money on them, like say a blade of foam plus the 35mm nose gun, that's okay because like you only have like a few of those hangars to worry about. The backpack craft on these liners have like lunges, they have the SSM-1s. These have the max size warhead for SSM-1s and size 4 warheads for the lunges. And that's because you need a max size warhead on an S1 to take down an S3H. Otherwise, it takes 2, which is not ideal. And since it's just regular blast frag, it doesn't have an incredibly high chance of taking down an S3H in one shot, but sometimes you can get lucky, especially if you can get those head-on collisions. So yeah, that's why I have these in these Kudas, because these are mainly meant to help with point defense, and that's also why they have the jam pods, because these will pull off ARAD and Home End Jam Seekers on missiles. Escort Chaff, to answer your question, Escort Chaff has a very, very small signature. It is very, very tiny in comparison to like a full-size ship. Yeah, so basically, Escort Chaff doesn't really do anything to help a host ship. It's too small. The signature is too small. Yeah. Yeah, and I think Mink has the right of it as well. So yeah, unfortunately, you can't use Craft Chaff as budget craft for your ship. It's too small and it doesn't work like that. So yeah. But yeah, these jamming pods will pull off, ARAD and Home End Jam Seekers on missiles so they can help with point defense. The Flechette is good at taking down conventional missiles and also hybrids in their cruise stage, so they can be used to sort of like interdict cruise missiles before they get within stage range and whatnot. Excuse me. Alright, so that's sort of what's going on for the craft in this fleet. There's also KBU-15s for like finishing off ships that have been disabled by the 450s on the Marauders themselves. Just a cute little trick you can do. The Marauders themselves are basically a pair of 450 dudes. They basically want to sit within, the 9 to 11 kilometer range bracket and use the radar tug here to get tracks on enemies to shoot at long range. Because they don't have a lot of DCEH, only 5 teams, but they do have 10 restores each. Double storage plus DCX is 5 teams and 10 restores, plus like a damage control central. So, as a front line, this is pretty good for dueling with 450s at standoff range and outside the range of a parallax, no less. So yeah, this is just an example of a frontline fleet you can have. And also, the reason why you might want to put craft on the back of a 450 liner and not, say, a 250 liner or what have you is because you can stay outside of Sursa range with your 450s here. And a good way to prevent your craft from being shot down by Sursas is to simply not be in range. However, this fleet here does feature a bellbird jammer on the liner in it, and the point of the bellbird is not to hide the liner. That you'll never ever hide a marauder with a single bellbird from anything, but what you can hide with a bellbird on a liner is your barracudas. So if you do have to close the distance and get closer within Sursa range, you can use the bellbird to cover your escort fighters and prevent them from getting shot down. And that's become a lot more relevant in the current meta, seeing as craft can't really passively evade Sursa anymore. And if you're like, H-burn evading as you're trying to defend your host ship, you're probably having a difficult time actually defending said host ship. And it's also just a big micro tax. So better to cover them with a jammer so that they don't get shot at by the Sursa regardless. If they have a bunch of floodlights, well, I mean, then that's that, but it can keep your craft alive a lot longer than they would otherwise. So yeah. That's why I also recommend like some form of ship-based jamming on battle carriers that have like this backpack craft is just to cover them from Sarissa and whatnot. And speaking of, we have our last fleet of the night, our double Axford fleet. These Axfords each have a pair of Tanos in the backpack. They're a pair of 450 Axfords with 120 millisecondaries. They each have like 5 milliliters of pop. One has a spyglass, one has a parallax. One has the interruption jammer and a floodlight for a self-illume. The other has a VLS2 for active decoys. You might notice that there's no killjoys here, and that's because the killjoys come on the backpack. The Tanos here have not only coil guns, but also jammers, and as you can see, are stealth coating. They also have articulated nozzles because the articulated nozzles help a lot for like interdicting missiles. It lets the craft much more easily lead with their nose gun and shoot down the missiles, which are going much faster than like the craft themselves are. So yeah, the stealth coating keeps the Tano from being seen and locked by Sarissa's right away. And then one of the Axfords also has a blanket jammer to cover said stealth Tanos and make it so that if there's an Acello in the area, it can't like just delete your backpack craft. It also prevents like OSP ships in general from getting a track on you, so that they can't use grape shot on your craft as easily. You'll never hide a pair of Axfords with a single blanket jammer, but you will hide your escort craft. As well, a jammer is always useful if like there's just regular old like active radar missiles coming at you. If those usually have like a Homa jam backup or something though, so you probably want to turn off the blanket jammer if you have missiles coming at you, so that the backpack craft with their jam pods can do their thing and pull off the jamming, or pull off the Homa jam or the ARAT and also use their coil gun. So yeah, that's how I generally would recommend using craft on the backpack of capital ships. Yeah. I think that's let me look at which text chat here. Question. In your opinion, how effective are bombers with S2 anti-craft? Aha. ASF bombers. So you can put blast frag S2s in a bomber, and it can be really good. However, S2s can be shot down by the ACMs that craft usually carry. They can be shot down by nose guns, especially if there's only a few S2s. It can work against like the, especially if like the enemy carrier player is like unaware and like caught essentially with their pants down. But like blast frag S2s, it can work. I won't say don't do it, and it can be a good thing to have. Like you can definitely like trick and kill enemy fighters that think you're just a normal bomber, and have your bombers kill the enemy fighters instead. It's just that usually bombers are used to drop payloads on ships, and if you're launching bombers for ASF, then you're not using them for strike. And fighters are usually faster and able to like get in position to intercept enemy craft more easily. Yeah, like what Ming says, if you want to put like one blast frag S2 into your bomber just to like mess with enemy fighters, that's definitely a good option. It's not like something you have to do by any stretch of the imagination, but it can definitely be a cool trick to have in your back pocket. Yeah. So yeah, that's definitely something you can do. Does anyone have any other questions? Oh, S3H. Aha. Yeah, I totally forgot to talk about size 3 hybrids and blast frag. So S3H blast frag is a good tool that ANS has. Before I end here, I want to definitely talk about the Bomber Destroyer 9000, also known as a large warhead blast frag S3H. If I could just find it in my library here. Aha. Yeah, this one right here. So this thing has a size 7 warhead blast frag. It will launch by using the Z key if your PDSML is set to manual. It's kind of up to you whether you want to like have no doctrine. If you give it like a doctrine like this, you still want it to be on manual fire for PDMSL. Otherwise, you'll blast all these out on like a single wing of bombers, and you'll be incredibly inefficient and sad. But essentially, all this does is make it so that the ship fires the right missile if you're on manual and you have multiple different kinds of ACMs and whatnot on the ship in question. But if this is like your only defensive missile on your ship, then you can just turn off the matrix and use the Z key to fire manually. So Minka, so this is from me talking to Dodo about it. According to Dodo, like if craft have more armor than their target, than like the missile or the ACM, then it'll do like no damage on a failed roll. Like that's what I heard from Dodo. If it does like a quarter damage, then it's still like functionally the same thing as no damage, in most cases. But yeah, like as far as I'm aware, if you have more armor than the blast frag warhead has armor penetration on your craft, it'll do no damage on a failed damage roll. Yeah, it's like the only niche of ceramic tiling. Yeah, so essentially back to the S3H here. You fire it with the Z key, Z prio for PD, and it'll go in, and this blast frag warhead is big enough with a big enough radius to take out like half of an entire wing of bombers in one go. It is a very powerful tool that you can use. Mine has cold gas on it, so it comes out faster. And yeah, it's definitely a good tool to have. And as opposed to A-Dash, like this thing can get multi-kills in a wing very easily, and you don't need a bullseye lock to hit with it either. You just need a good enough track for the blast frag to connect. Yeah. So that's that. Let's see. Also, on the note of like ceramic tiling, the only thing that I want to talk about for bombers here with ceramic tiling is that it makes the armor enough to resist 20 mil, but a 20 mil has like a DPS of effectively infinity already, so it only lets the bombers survive another half second under 20 mil fire. I'm sure someone could figure out a way to take advantage of this, but in the current meta, especially with the prevalence of Sarissa and Grape Shot, it's generally suboptimal to run ceramic tiling on bombers. Like if you're taking 20 mil fire, something has gone terribly wrong for your bombers already. So yeah, that's all that ceramic tiling does for bombers, is makes 20 mil do half damage. Yeah. All right. So does anyone have any other questions? Give it a second here. S2 standoff. Yeah, I can show that really quick. 1 second. Let me just load up my version of that fleet. I think it's under here. Okay. Aha, here we go. So I think I need to update this for the new patch. Because I think it just needs to have the missile control computer now. But essentially, you can do like what's known as an S2 levy, which is basically all bombers all the time, and it's just a bunch of S2s that you fire on standoff against targets. You basically become a cruise missile fleet with extra steps because you don't provide any air superiority, you don't provide any sensors. The only thing you provide is mass amounts of munitions on target. While ANS doctrine is usually like small salvos of hybrids, this turns that on its head and instead fires large salvos of like cheap missiles at the target, like your OSP. And that can do a lot of damage and like have an outsized impact on like meta OSP fleets. It's sort of a counter meta build, and it's kind of niche. Like I managed to fit like one sundial into this somehow, but it only has like 16 bombers and like 8 extremely basic Tanos that don't even have any ECMs on them. But yeah, this is definitely like something you can do. Yeah, I mean, cause right of it. This is it's kind of an all-in sort of style of fleet, but a decently popular sort of archetype. So yeah, something to be on the lookout for if you're on OSP. Just know that if you see like an S2 levy out in the wild with a bunch of bombers, if you have a carrier on your team, tell your team's carrier to go hunt down their carrier, because as you can see, 8 Tanos with 20 mil and nothing else does not do well in the air war. So yeah. You can also use S2 claymores on a more generalist sort of levy fleet that has more ASF in it. But S2s are less efficient as a damage platform than torpedoes are. Torpedoes give you more damage per point than S2s do, and also have a lot more health than S2s do. So if you can get in range for torpedoes, you'll generally get more bang for your buck, but S2s are more longer range and safer than torpedoes are. So that's an archetype you can pursue if you wish. Yeah. You can also achieve something similar on OSP by putting S2s on your surgeons. Same sort of deal there. They're safer than torps, but less point efficient. And also ANS usually is equipped to deal with mass amounts of missiles, since that's usually what OSP has anyway. So yeah. That's basically, in a nutshell, how S2 bombers go. Yeah, and you can put like spearfish on your S2 sturgeons as like pseudo decoys. S3 torpasiums. I think that might be a bit too niche for the tutorial here. But you can definitely fill a torpedo full of blast frag and do something with that. You might just struggle to find a meta use for that, however. It seems like more of a meme to me than something that's like effective, usually. Let's see, let me look back through. Let's see if there's any questions I missed. Okay, any questions I missed, anyone? I'm not seeing anything looking back through the general chat here. Oh, okay. Yeah, you can use bombers to like tank a bit of Aurora and basically deplete the health of an Aurora before you fire your torps. You have to time it right, because if you don't fire your torps in time, you lose the bomber to Aurora, which is not good. But yeah, you can use your claymore as sort of like a, you know, pseudo decoy in and of itself to like tank some Aurora so more of your torps can get through. It's kind of a niche use, but you know, something to consider. You just want to make sure that you can you want to make sure that you can get your, you know, claymores and sturgeons back if you do that, though. To answer your question, Nexi, generally no. Defensive missiles will not fire at ships. And fighters automatically set their missiles to defensive. So yeah, they won't fire at ships. Yeah, no, unfortunately. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you might be able to do something like that if you have like an empty missile that has like no warhead. But I think if it has like blast frag or something, the fighter will automatically make it defensive. Yeah, or if I guess it has an HEI warhead, then it would of course act as like a pseudo decoy of sorts. Yeah. Alright. I think that's about everything I have time for tonight. I think I'll probably wrap up now. Yeah. I'll let Sleepo like ask another question if he has another one. I see him typing. EL frag. Essentially, in a nutshell, EL frag has more armor pen and blast radius than regular blast frag. Same amount of damage, but more armor pen and more blast radius, essentially. And also, it has a higher chance of rolling good on damage. Yeah. Yeah, it's incredibly expensive, however. Okay. So that's that. I hope you all enjoyed the carrier tutorial and lesson that I was able to give tonight. I hope that I showed everyone some tips and tricks to use a carrier in the current meta, and like how the update has sort of changed things. I hope that this gives you some direction and some ideas on how to build your own carriers and like how to, like, you know, succeed in the craft game, flying your little planes around. I'll post all of the fleets I showcased tonight here in voice text chat. Feel free to download them, they're yours. You can play them as is, change them, use them as inspiration, whatever you want to do. that, and that, and that. Aha, got him. Play 6 chat. Uploading 6 files. And these also contain all of the missiles that I showcased tonight. There's about a bajillion different kinds of torpedoes and ACMs in here, so please enjoy. Have lots of fun blowing stuff up in the battle space. Alright, I'll see you all later. Have a great night, and go have fun.